unflesh, unbone, untrue religion. Yes, dear viewers, this is your Unvision. And I could go for some fried chicken, but that is neither here nor there. The important thing is, I am back with part 2 of the I Played a Thing 5th anniversary Q&A. I do regret not getting this up last weekend as anticipated, but I think I was a little bit shagged after getting home from vacation because I got in Friday evening and proceeded to spend the following weekend pretty much entirely asleep. Seriously, I hardly got out of bed at all. It's really kind of shameful. But anyway, it was an excellent vacation. Many thanks to my excellent hosts. Had a very good time, very relaxing. Did a lot of nifty stuff like visiting Creative Engineering, the birthplace of Showbiz Pizza, and Big Cat Rescue. Speaking of which, if you are within range of Tampa FL, or if you ever just find yourself passing through with some time on your hands, I heartily recommend a visit to Big Cat Rescue. It was a thoroughly entertaining experience, and their reasonable tour fees help to keep them open and keep the gatos well fed and well cared for, so it's really win-win all around. They can be found at bigcatrescue.org and also have a pretty nice YouTube channel here, also under username Big Cat Rescue. So, yeah, check them out. Anyway, enough of my pimping. It's time to get back to your burning inquiries. Our first set of cues today comes from the mysterious Kunoichi Kitten. And I should point out, kittens do make very good assassins. They don't even have to hide. They can just wander through your castle and no one suspects a thing. If anyone even notices them, they'll just, pet them or maybe pick them up and cuddle them a little before going about their day, and then when you least expect it, they trip your ass down the stairs. Anywho, among various compliments and well-wishings, which I appreciate as always, Kunoichi Kitten notes, I truly hope you don't take offense that I've been using your voice for about 2.5 years now as a sleep aid. I don't take offense at all, glad to be of service, but wow, this is really a thing, isn't it? I have to wonder if there's a career path in this for me. I'll have to look into that. Anyway, the questions. First off, do you keep up with the current generation of gaming, or do you follow the beat of your own drums with these more unorthodox, old school, and obscure games? Well, I do keep up with the current generation. I do spend a lot of my time with the retro stuff and the indie scene and so on. But, I do keep an ear to the ground with respect to what's coming out on the kind of mainstream channel, and if something grabs my attention, I will definitely check it out. I've definitely become more selective and don't play as many of the latest and greatest as I used to, largely because since the PS2 era, most of the more popular and prolific genres, like FPSs and what have you, don't appeal to me so much, but I do indeed keep a hand in the mix and take my good times where I can find them. Next question. If so, what are your favorite games of the past 3 years? Well, since we're almost done with 2012, I'll just say that includes 2010, 11, and 12. And that would be then Dark Souls, Dead Rising 2, and Deadly Premonition. And more importantly, PC or console? Well, a little of both, really. On the PC, I definitely have been impressed with a lot of the indie and small publisher stuff that's been coming along in the past few years. I think we're definitely seeing a bright period for the garage developer or the small developer on the PC. But when it comes to the big titles, I'm really more of a console kid. Partly it's just how I came up, and while there's definitely a case to be made for the modding scene on the PC and things like that, given my druthers, I'd really just kind of sprawl on the couch with a gamepad and play that stuff on a TV. Your mileage may vary, but that's how I do. And, says Kunoichi Kitten, this one is more of a bonus. You mentioned the Yakuza franchise a while ago. I'm a huge fan. So am I. How did you feel about Dead Souls, and are you super stoked for Ryu ga Gotoku 5? Well, Dead Souls I didn't pay that much attention to, honestly, because as I understand it, it's mostly a shooter type of thing. And when I play a Yakuza game, I just want to beat the shit out of people with my hands and various improbable weapons. So, it didn't really look like my bar of chocolate, but as always, I invite recommendations to the contrary. Haven't actually played it, so from that perspective, I can't provide any insights. As for Ryu ga Gotoku 5, it looks very cool. I'm glad to see they're using a new engine for it, and I'm just really hoping it gets localized, because with all of the side quests and the various plot dumps and all that, I can't see myself playing through it in Japanese. I don't know if this is true, I haven't confirmed or anything, but I heard that Yakuza 4 didn't do so hot, so fingers firmly crossed that we get Ryu ga Gotoku 5 as Yakuza 5 in the English-speaking countries. I will beam my hopes, and I hope you will beam your hopes as well. Together we can do this. Anyway, thank you very much, Kunoichi Kitten. Next up, we have one from Zizzy Squirrel, who says, I've been meaning to ask about your process, like what you use to record and such like. Well, that's a fairly easy one to answer, although the answer does somewhat depend on what kind of recording I'm doing. Generally, my screen cappery will fall into one of three categories. 1. Something fairly light on the CPU, like an emulator for an older system. Something more CPU demanding, like a modern PC game or an emulator for a more recent system. Or when I'm recording from real hardware, like in the case of Aquanauts Holiday, where I was video capturing directly from my PS3. In the first case, which applies mostly to things like 8 and 16-bit emulators, I will simplify life by just recording with Camtasia Studio, which is fairly point and shoot, pretty simple, not a whole lot of setup involved. However, Camtasia Studio's screen recording application does not work so well for things that are graphically intensive, CPU intensive, in which case I will usually use Bandicam. A lot of people prefer Fraps for such purposes. I have a modest preference for Bandicam, but Fraps will do about as well in the same kind of situation. And when I'm recording from real hardware, like a PS3 or what have you, then I use a Blackmagic Intensity Pro video capture card, and just use its bundled software, which is Blackmagic Media Express. Whenever I need to do some post-editing, I do that in Camtasia Studio, just because I'm a complete idiot when it comes to video editing, and Camtasia Studio is the one app that I've been able to find that is reasonably powerful enough to do all the stuff that I need to do, like multiple timelines and my beloved cube wipe, while being drool-proof enough that I can actually understand how to use it. I have experimented with things like Sony Vegas and, what's the Adobe one? Oh yeah, Premiere Pro, but I just stare at those like a dog that's just been shown a card trick. I cannot make heads or tails of them. So, Camtasia Studio is right about my, I guess, expertise level, while doing everything that I need it to do, so that suits me well for editing. And whenever I need to re-encode something, I just use Media Coder, which is nice and versatile, and also pretty drool-proof. So I hope that answers that to your satisfaction, and thank you for writing. Next on the mic is Raditz86, whose inquiring mind wants to know, how did you come to meet your fellow players of things that have been on your channel? Through the internet? In real life? And in what way? Well, there's another fairly easy one to answer. In almost all cases, it has indeed been through the internet, like GTF and Lord Brimstone and so on. They were watchers and commenters, and contacted me about collaborating with them on things like GTF's Oath in Felghana and Brimstone's Ys 1 and 2 4DS LP. And so we got in touch and we worked out the details and did our thing over Skype. The major exception is, of course, Boss Goji, who I did meet online, but outside of a thing-playing context, through mutual friends of ours. After we'd known each other for a while, I was looking for a roomie or two to help with expenses, so we cohabitated for a few years, and the early We Played a Thing sessions, such as Pulirula and Battle Circuit, were done with both of us in front of my computer sharing a mic. Thank you, oh Raditz my Raditz, for your question. Warning, a huge question from Harriet Lowe is approaching fast. I noticed that quite a few of your iPads are of Saturn games, and I wondered what other Saturn games you are a fan of, as almost all of my favorite games are on the Saturn. Particularly, are you a fan of Knights, and if so, what do you think about the recent HD remake? I'm glad they showed they still care about Knights, and that it was true to the original, but the version of Christmas Nights, with all the presents and the fun stuff with the system clock removed, kinda bugged me. Well, I am a fan of the Saturn, which I consider a criminally underrated system, and some of my favorites on the platform include Astal, Panzer Dragoon, Panzer Dragoon Zwei, Panzer Dragoon Saga, Princess Crown, Dragon Force, Langrisser 4, Knights, Dark Savior, Guardian Heroes, Legend of Oasis, and Radiant Silvergun, and I also have this bizarre affection for Sonic R, which I can neither explain nor excuse. It's a terribly flawed game, and especially restricted by the hardware limitations, but something about it just endears it to me. The cheesy but infectious vocal tracks probably have something to do with it. As for Knights, as it was in that list, I am very fond of it. However, I cannot speak on the HD remake because it's on my list. It's a game that I do want to pick up, but I have not grabbed it yet. But, Knights with better visuals? Yes, please and thank you. And I am looking forward to it. And thank you very much, Harriet, for your question. Our next piercing stare into my psyche comes courtesy of Cypher782. What are some of the newer generation games that you like, or think are interesting? I know you've said that you played Demon's Souls in your Dark Savior videos, and Batman Arkham Asylum, but what others do you enjoy? Well, Demon's Souls and Arkham Asylum are definitely worth mentioning. I should add that I tried Arkham City, but for some reason it just didn't grab me. It's like the magic was gone. It seems to be very well regarded, and I'm really not sure what it is that I didn't like as much. Maybe lightning just wouldn't strike twice. Anyway, on the other hand, Dark Souls is pretty wonderful stuff, as I've mentioned before. I haven't finished it yet, but I intend to, and I do enjoy it very much when I get around to playing it. As in one of my other questions, I was very fond of Deadly Premonition, and the Dead Rising series I'm a big fan of. I think the original is still extremely playable, and Dead Rising 2, as I mentioned, was one of my favorite games of the last few years. Really, the only part of the Dead Rising series I didn't especially care for was the downloadable game Case West, which, I don't know, just sticking the Dead Rising gameplay in a boring concrete bunker and having you deal with a lot of enemies with guns, which the engine doesn't do very well. It just didn't really seem in the spirit of Dead Rising to me, but every other part of it so far has been great. Let's see, what else? Fist of the North Star, Ken's Rage was definitely good times. Long-time watchers will not be surprised to hear that I enjoyed the theme, of course, and I also genuinely enjoyed the gameplay, although that may be because I hadn't played many of the Dynasty Warriors, Musou type of games before, and so I wasn't thoroughly sick of the mechanics. I'm certainly looking forward to the sequel, in large part because it does cover the Shura and Gento Koken story arcs, which I think need a lot more love in terms of video game adaptations. While my favorite game in the Yakuza series remains 2 on the PS2, I did greatly enjoy 3 and 4 on the PS3. And also for the PS3, the system seller for me was Metal Gear Solid 4, which certainly does have its issues, and I didn't think it was nearly as good as Snake Eater. I do not regret it at all, and it remains a favorite of mine. I also very much enjoyed Ratchet & Clank Future, Crack in Time, and Tools of Destruction. There is, of course, Aquanaut's Holiday, Hidden Memories. I also think Nier was undeservedly overlooked and underrated. It's just a little art game, but I like Flower a lot. Double Dragon Neon was also good fun. Odd thing about it being for such a leveler to the Double Dragon series, it doesn't really play anything like a Double Dragon game, but I enjoy it quite a bit on its own merits. Right now, I am enjoying the hell out of Tokyo Jungle. That's kind of my game du jour, and I stayed up to ridiculous hours playing it last night. Definitely worth looking into if you're a PS2 or a PS3 kind of person. As for games I haven't played yet, but I'm interested in very much, I have downloaded Journey on my PS3, but I haven't gotten around to playing it yet. I understand it's magical stuff. Dust on the 360 is of great interest to me, and when I talked about the game I would create in my last QnA video, a number of people recommended Dragon's Dogma to me for similarities that it had to my ideas, and I was already interested in Dragon's Dogma, but that only made me more so. And recently I had some credit with Amazon, and so I bought Dragon's Dogma. It actually just landed in my mailbox yesterday, so I haven't gotten around to playing that yet, but I'm looking forward to it. So yeah, while I don't really play as much in this generation compared to the last, my PS2 library is just ridiculously huge. It definitely has its high points, and when it hits pretty hard. So thank you very much, Cypher, and on to the next. Jam, here comes the man, hot damn. Our next series of questions comes from the invincible Frank-O-Matic. Here's one I'm sure you won't get 27 million times. Where'd the name Un come from? Well, I didn't get that one 27 million times, although one other person did submit the same question, and that was Angelic Dirt, so shoutouts to you, Dirt Dog, for also sending in that question. And for the answer, I have to dip back into the furry thing with apologies. Un is short for Untitled, which is sort of my personal representative character within skunkfuckery contexts, and the name I use within the fandom. So, that's pretty much that. The esteemed Mr. Omatic continues. Generic question 2. What was your least favorite thing to play? Well, as I mentioned in the other Q&A video, I wasn't very happy with the outcome of my Revenge of Shinobi playthrough, but I'm going to look at this question more as one of process, which series were the biggest pains in the ass to put together, and for that I'm gonna have to say Princess Crown. Now, I certainly don't dislike the game itself, but for all its many merits, it is rather repetitive. There's a lot of backtracking, you spend a lot of time fighting the same monsters over and over, and there are repeat dungeons and things like that, and of course all the fetching and money grinding in Proserpina's scenario. And it also required a lot more post-editing than my other videos. I had to cut out all the boring travel time, all the redundant random battles, and I also had to go through each video and snip out most of the loading time, which is not severe, but, you know, we don't need that in an LP video. So, a lot of the time, when what I would actually post was a 30-minute video, it would start out before I started cutting as like an hour and a half of raw footage. So, yeah. That was really rather arduous compared to the average series of I Played a Thing. And I would be remiss if I didn't take a moment to mention Hell, that being my attempt at screenshot LPing. I still haven't completely written off the idea of finishing it someday, but I really don't know if I ever will, because the amount of transcription involved, and just all the aggravation of keeping the screenshots sorted, and you know, still actually coming up with commentary while I'm handling all that. It's really like having my gums tattooed, and it just fills me with all the more respect for the screenshot LP grandmasters like the Dark Id. I do not know how they do it, but I'm glad they do. And less generic question 3, if you could only ever play one game again for the rest of your life, what would you pick? Well, it would be something that I could just pick up and play anytime. It would have to be something I could play over and over again, either to improve on my previous personal best, or just because I don't get tired of it. And of course it would be something that I enjoy greatly every time. So, with apologies for the repetition, I think I'm going to have to go back to Space Harrier on this one. It has many merits of its own, being fast, colorful, has great music, and so on. And it's a game that I like trying to beat my past scores on. And it also just has great personal significance to me, being probably the game I was more immersed in at its time than any other throughout the course of my life. So it just has great legendary game status to me, so I think that would be the one. Thank you very much, Frankomatic, and let us continue onward. Straight into another series of 3 from Lycanthrokeith. Number 1. One of the best things about your videos is, frankly, your voice. You have the smooth dulcet tones of a pro radio DJ. I was wondering if you had ever worked in radio, studied mass comm, done stand-up comedy, or had any kind of professional vocal training, including singing or diction lessons. Well, I thank you very much for the kind words, but that's a negative. About the closest I've ever come is doing a fair amount of theater in high school, and theater was in fact my minor in college, although I never actually was involved in any productions during my college years. But voice stuff was never really a major part of any of that, and certainly I can't sing for Little Green Apples. While I don't know if I'd actually be any good at it, the idea of getting into voice acting has certainly interested me at times, but between my day job, all the other crap I need to jam into my days, and my downtime, I've never gotten around to looking into it with any seriousness, but one of these days when I'm feeling froggy, I just might. But yeah, by and large, the way I talk is just the way I talk, and I'm glad you enjoy it. Number 2. When you do your commentaries, how much of your commentary, during and or post, is scripted, and how much is off the cuff? Well, for the most part, it's off the cuff. A lot of the time, especially when I'm doing post-commentary on something like Aquanaut's Holiday or Princess Crown, I'll have a little checklist of things that I want to hit on my way through, just the major bullet points. But how I string them together and what comes in between, I just improvise. And when I'm doing live commentary, of course I can't prepare for what's going to happen as a result of my playing in any particular session. But if there's something about a game that has always struck me as funny, or if I know there's something coming up that I have particular thoughts about, or that a good line came to mind about ahead of time, I will sometimes have those prepared in advance and just look for a good opportunity to drop them. But overall, I would say that my commentary is definitely more on the fly than scripted ahead of time. I'm not sure what the proportion would be, maybe 80 to 20% on average, but that ratio can shift depending on the game and just on how things are coming to me on any particular day. And let's see, number 3. Love, love, love the pro wrestling references. The Tony Schiavone Yatea gag and the Stan Hansen Centaur from Princess Crown were my personal faves. Though I have to wonder, when some of the non-fans inevitably don't get them, do you find it worth your time to explain, or figure it's better to move on? Personally speaking, I can't remember how many people gave me disappointed looks when it was revealed that, gasp, I like pro wrestling. Well, I'm glad you enjoy them. I generally just drop them when they come to me, and if people ask me after the fact, what were you talking about there? then I'll at least make an effort to explain the reference, if only for their enlightenment. But if I have to explain it and they don't have the context, then it usually isn't funny. So I guess those are really in there more as a bonus for the folks that do get them, and I admit to some extent for my own amusement. I guess more than anything, I'm kind of a lapsed wrestling fan these days, because I do find the current WWE very homogenized and barely watchable, and TNA has certainly improved by leaps and bounds since the departure of Russo, but it still suffers from a lot of dumbassery in the booking, in my opinion. And the stuff I really do enjoy, like ROH and some of the Japanese promotions and Chikara, just hasn't been high in my priorities with respect to my spare time and money. So I really don't actually watch a lot of wrestling these days, but I do keep my subscription up to Wrestling Observer and Figure 4 Weekly, just to keep a hand in and keep up with what's going on in that world, and because Brian and Vinny, and even sometimes Dave Meltzer, are just funny motherfuckers. So thank you very much, Lycanthro Keith. Well, I still have some unanswered questions waiting, but we're getting up around the half-hour mark once again, and before the weekend is over, I still need to do some laundry, get some dinner, and yes, I admit it, play some more Tokyo Jungle. So I'm going to sign off for now, and we'll be taking this into a part 3. If I haven't gotten to your question yet, rest assured I will. In the meantime, I thank you all for your cues, and I hope you've been enjoying the A's. Till next time, mad unlove to you all, take care, and I'll see you soon.